Well, hey everyone. Today we're kicking off a brand new series that's dealing with something that I think all of us need help with. And maybe for some of you, as we kick off this series, you know those moments where you feel really nervous about something, where you feel like you can't eat and you're not sleeping well, you're unable to focus. For me, I remember specifically there was a time in high school that this really happened, and it was when I took my driver's test at the age of 16. Now, I had went through driver's ed in our school system and, heard all the instruction, spent the countless hours driving, which was far more than what you have to do now, and did all of this work, and I felt ready to take the test. Like I had practiced driving with my parents who somehow trusted me, to take them different places and do things. And so all of this happened. And so I walked into the BMV in our small town. And I remember when I walked in, I was determined that I was not going to come back to that place, which I knew I was going to have to one day, but I was going to pass the test the first time. And so I needed my independence. I needed to take that step. I needed to stop bumming rides from my parents or my friends. And so I needed to take this step. And so I climbed into the driver's seat of the car that I took the test in. And you know that feeling where you're sitting there and then all of a sudden the guy who's grading you or the woman who's grading you gets into the passenger seat and they've got their clipboard and their pen. And this particular gentleman who was doing my assessment, he sat there and he kept clicking his pen and all of this stuff was happening. But the part of the test that I was really most nervous about was that I knew I was going to have to parallel park. And while I felt like I had a good grasp on driving and navigating and doing all those things, parallel parking was something I wasn't very good at. And so we got to the point of the test where I knew that was next. And he looks around, and he's trying to find a place to parallel park. And in our small town, there wasn't one, which I was really relieved. And I kind of exhaled and I was like, hey, this is great. I don't have to do this. And then he said, well, you see that car over there? He said, I want you to kind of pull up beside it like you're going to parallel park behind it. And imagine there's a car behind you. And I was like, okay, well, there's not a whole lot of pressure. If I go back a little too far, it's not a big deal. But obviously I was cautious, went through the motions, got, the car parked into the spot. And lo and behold, I passed my exam. And I was thrilled. But then I started to think to myself, well, if he's this lax with me that, just act like there's a car behind you, is this the guy that's been passing everybody in their driver's ed classes and all, the people that shouldn't be driving, that are driving, the ones that I'm talking about? Is this the guy who's signing off on them? But here's the long and short of it. Through that experience, I learned what the phrase stressed out really meant. And stressed out is something that really happens to all of us. It's the moment when we have tryouts or auditions tomorrow. Or it's the moment when we're waiting to hear back from the college that we've applied to and wanted to go to for many years. Or it's when we have the big test or the big project that's coming up. Or it's when we finally work up the courage to ask the person that we've been, interested in for some time out on a date. You see, in those moments, it feels overwhelming. Your heart is racing. You have a hard time focusing on really anything, and you just feel frenzy. Stress is taking over, and it feels like all of your thoughts, instead of being kind of sequentially in order, are coming at you and happening at the same time. In other words, it's everything, everywhere. It feels chaotic. Like all of your emotions are flooding in simultaneously, and it happens to all of us a lot. And that's why we want to spend the next couple weeks talking about this topic, is because chances are we've all felt the weight of stress in our lives. So today, there are a lot of things that can add stress to your life. And so to help illustrate this, I brought, my backpack with me, but I also brought some other things with me that are going to be placed inside the backpack. Because for some of you, when we talk about this idea of stress, it's a thing like relationships. And our relationships, maybe it's a group of friends that, you feel like the one who holds everything together, or you're the one that's being responsible to get everybody, having everybody get along. And, or maybe you feel the pressure in your relationship with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, or maybe you feel, pressure in a relationship with your teammates or a coach. You see, chances are all of us have at least one relationship that's adding some extra drama and stress to our lives. Or maybe it's not the issue of relationships. Maybe for you, it's family. And maybe your family is a big source of stress. And you know that when you get home each and every day, there's going to be chaos. And so you try to avoid causing problems, and all this leads to you kind of walking on eggshells and feeling like, even though you're carrying a burden, you can't possibly disclose that to anybody else. Maybe your family members are always fighting. Maybe your siblings are always acting up, and you can't seem to escape the stress in your own home. Maybe for some of you, it's not relationships and it's not family. Maybe for some of you, it's the issue of school. And school stresses you out because on one hand, you want to survive and you want to pass your classes. But on the other hand, you know that every grade matters as you get ready to apply to colleges. And then there's the pressure from your teachers and your parents to just do better. Or maybe for some of you, it's the stress you feel when it comes to your faith. And you know that there are things that you should be doing better, but you just don't feel like you are. And sometimes you try harder. Sometimes you feel the pressure of all of these things. And sometimes you just want to quit trying, even though there's a little nagging guilt in the back of your mind. And eventually you get all of those in, your life, and all of that happens. And the weight of stress becomes a lot to carry. And eventually it can weigh us down in all kinds of ways. For example, stress can make us irritable and impatient. When we feel stressed out, sometimes we snap at people who have nothing to do with our stress. They just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And because we're in our own minds and we're wrapped up in scenarios that may or may not happen, we end up being short and unpleasant with the people that are right in front of us. But not only can stress make us irritable and impatient, stress can also impact us physically. When we're under stress, we may struggle with headaches. We can either eat too much or too little. We have difficulties, concentrating or trouble sleeping. Those are all the ways that our body tells us we're under stress. Or what about this one? Stress can lead us to respond in unhealthy ways. We can fall back into old habits that numb the overwhelming feelings that we have instead of doing what's best or what God says is best. And we can start treating people poorly instead of treating them like they're made in the image of God. So this has an impact on our faith. You see how it spirals? Stress starts as one thing and eventually it morphs into everything everywhere. And if you're getting stressed talking about stress, trust me, I get it. But here's the thing, is you don't have to keep living in a constant stressful situation. Feeling like, everything being everywhere because it just feels like a lot. Because thankfully there's a more and a better and a peaceful way for all of us to live. And so to help us get there today, we're going to look at a passage from a letter of 1 Peter. Now, this was written by, shocker, Peter, who was one of Jesus' closest 12 friends. He was in the group of the disciples, and he followed Jesus during his 3 earthly years of ministry. And after Jesus' death and resurrection, Peter became one of the first leaders of the growing early Christian church. He helped the church get started by encouraging them to really know what it was to know Jesus and to live the way that Jesus told them to live. And here's the good news, is Jesus wants to live with you and I, and to help us live with as little stress as possible. Now, I know this because of what Peter tells us and what he spoke to the early Jewish followers, or the early Jesus followers rather, in this particular letter. So here's what he says. Give all your worries and cares to God, for he cares about you. Give all your worries and cares to God, for he cares about you. You see, Peter says, give all of your worries, all of your cares to God. Not just the major ones, not just the ones that everybody knows about, not just the things that seem like the biggest deal. No, give all of your cares, every single one. So maybe for some of you, you're stressed out about your SAT or your ACT score. You can give it to God. Maybe you're stressed out about your mom's new boyfriend or your dad's new girlfriend. You can give it to God. Maybe you're stressed out about the number of hours that you're getting at work and are you going to make enough money? You can give it to God. Or maybe you're stressed out about your college applications. You can give it to God. You see, big or small, every single stress that sends us spiraling is something that God wants to carry for us. You see, some translations of this particular verse from 1 Peter use the word cast instead of give. And particularly, I love the word cast because literally what that means is to throw something forcefully in a specific direction. So Peter was not only giving us permission to give our cares to God, but he was literally telling us, throw them forcefully in the direction of God. Get that stress off of you as fast as you can because you were never meant to carry it. You see, when we're stressed out, though, we tend to cast ourselves and our cares into other things. Like, for example, when we're stressed out, we tend to go into more schoolwork. Or when we're stressed out, we go to more parties. Or we have more distractions like endless Snapchat or social media conversations. Or we have more unhealthy escapes like pornography. You see, when we cast our cares on things that we weren't designed to do, that's where we run into issues. And the end result is usually even more stress in our lives. But all the while, we have a God who loves us and who cares about us and who wants to carry our stress. Why? Because as Peter pointed out, God cares about us. And God wants what's best for you and I. And so as you think about this, God wants to take the weight of your stress. God wants to take the weight of your stress. And he wants to be the one to carry it. And even though it feels heavier and heavier, he wants to take that off of your shoulder. And he wants to pick up what feels like a lot to us on our behalf. Think of it this way. When you're carrying a lot, remember God cares a lot. When you're carrying a lot, remember God cares a lot. Now you can trust God with what you're carrying. You can take it off of your shoulders and you can give it to him because God cares a lot. And he's bigger, stronger, and more powerful than you and I will ever be. So the next time you find yourself stressing out about something, everything everywhere, and thinking it just feels like a lot, remember you can give your stress to God. Now here are a few things that you can do to give your stress to God. First, you have to become aware of the stress you're carrying. Start by thinking about the stuff that feels like a lot for you right now. Identify the stuff in your life that may be causing you the most stress. So become aware of the stress you're carrying. Then admit that you weren't meant to carry your stress alone. Now, of course, the best way to get that help is by talking to God about your stress. And when stress starts to spiral in your mind, stop and pray. Ask God to help you through that stress. I mean, you can literally, remember, you can throw it all at God in prayer. It might not immediately change your circumstances, but it will recenter you on the reality that God is actively caring for you. And if you're not sure that you're ready for that, then try writing the stress that you're feeling. Keep a journal or a note on your phone, and over time, maybe you'll be ready to share that with God or with somebody else. Some of you need to process stress with another person. Maybe it's a close friend or a family member or a small group leader. All of those people can be really helpful. There are people that are in your lives who care about you, who desire to help you and encourage you and support you, especially when you're stressed. Some of us may even need to find a mental health professional to deal with the weight of stress that's really impacting our day-to-day lives. So maybe for you, simply sharing your stress with someone you trust is a good place to begin. Now, you can also do a few things to help you right in the moment. Say you're sitting at your desk and you're getting ready to take a test that really has you stressed. You can't necessarily pull out a journal or stop and say a long prayer or give somebody a phone call right in that moment. But you can do a few things to calm yourself down. Maybe you take a few deep breaths. Maybe you close your eyes for a few seconds. Maybe you say a quick and silent prayer. Maybe you squeeze your fists really tightly together, as tight as you can for about 15 seconds, and then relax them. Now, those simple tricks won't necessarily take away the stress, but they will lighten the load in the moment. Because remember, God didn't intend for you and I to live our lives stressed out all the time. And that's why God wants to help us carry the weight of it. Because when you're carrying a lot, remember that God cares a lot. And when you feel like you're surrounded by everything everywhere, just know that He loves you so much and He is right there with you and for you. So as we wrap this up today, I want to leave you with this question. What's one stress in my life that I can give to God? What's one stress in my life that I can give to God today? Well, thank you so much for checking out this first week of our series, Everything, Everywhere, as we talk about this idea of stress. And we know this is something that all of us deal with. We all have stress. We all have worry in our lives. And so we're going to continue to unpack this next week. We'd love to see you in person. We meet from 6 to 8 p.m. in the youth room at New Hope Church, and we'd love to see you as we continue to unpack this topic that we think is so relevant and so applicable to your lives today. Have a great and wonderful rest of your day. And remember, if you need to talk to anybody or you need to check in with anybody, feel free. Shoot me a text, give me a call, send me an email, stop by the church, whatever it takes. We'd love to connect with you, and we'd love to walk alongside of you as you go through this season, maybe that's filled with a lot of stress and worry in your life. Have a great and wonderful rest of your day, and we hope to see you soon.